Hello and welcome to our Get a Life moment for today with myself, Lisa Davies, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by a very special lady today, CEO and founder of the Rosie May Foundation, Mary Storrie. Welcome, Mary.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. So, interestingly enough, I don't know if you remember this, Mary, we used to be neighbours. We used to live around the corner from one another.
I absolutely do.
I mean, we didn't really know each other very well. You know, kind of those people who live around the corner in a village and you just say hello to as you walk past them, that type of thing. So we kind of knew each other kind of very vaguely from a distance. But for those people watching in, it would be really useful for you to kind of share, who is Mary Storrie then? Who are you? What are you all about?
Who am I? That's a really good question, actually. As you know, we used to live close to each other, but I didn't actually really know that until you told me that, you know, kind of later on when I met you. Basically, I've lived in the same village now for over 30 years.
Right.
And my background is essentially, I started off nursery nursing, actually.
Right.
And then I progressed to nursing. So I trained at the QMC. I worked as a paediatric nurse. I then moved to Grantham Hospital. Then I worked in the community. And then I went into teaching.
Right. Okay.
So I set up one of the first NNEB courses with a colleague actually at our local college. And we, in fact, took the first students to Romania just as the revolution had happened in Romania. You know, when all those images came out of children being tied to their cots. And
oh, yes.
remember, we took, so in 1981, which was a year after the revolution, we took, I mean, I don't know how we did it now when I look back, but we took a bus full on a minibus from here to Bucharest.
Wow.
Of students who, I mean, you know, local students that had, you know, barely been to London, never mind, you know, Bucharest, when, you know, it had just come out of, you know, communism. So we got there and, you know, there were still, you know, bullet holes in all the walls, you know, there was nothing in the shops, just kind of a few rusty tins on shelves, and people were queuing for days for food. And, you know, it was absolutely, you know, just decimated. And we went to one of the biggest orphanages in Romania, in Bucharest, where the children obviously weren't tied to cots anymore, but, you know, the children were still there. So, yeah, so that was, I guess, my first introduction to, you know, kind of global, you know, what was happening, you know, kind of in the globe, you know, on a global scale, and global poverty and everything else. So yeah, so
that's quite a vast journey if you look at the career you'd had until that point. And, you know, we lived in the same village in Bottisford in Nottinghamshire. It's a beautiful, very rural location, what you might call well-heeled. You know, you're not likely to be really exposed to that global suffering from that little village where we live. You know, it's all very nice, you know, not quite white picket fences, but, you know, not far from that. So quite a dramatic experience for yourself and the students.
Yeah, and when I look back, you know, I kind of realize, you know, in hindsight, how absolutely, as you say, dramatic and, you know, life-changing that experience was, you know, for everybody concerned, you know, so yeah, so that was, and then, you know, and then I carried on teaching, and then decided, I set up my own actually nanny and au pair agency when I came out of teaching. So I ran that. So that was the first time I kind of started working from home. And yeah, so I ran that for 10 years, and you know, we did live-in nannies. We did au pairs that came from other countries to study English and, you know, live with families. And so that was really interesting. We prided ourselves in interviewing, you know, everybody and visiting particularly au pairs in their own homes, so that, you know, we could you know, ensure that, you know, they weren't being, you know, exploited and you know, everything else. So so then I did that, and and then, you know, then I started the charity. So
I mean, if that's not an inspiring journey enough, what you then went on to create is truly inspirational. So share with us, if you would, Mary, how did you move from that very inspiring journey to find yourself where you are today?
Yeah. So a lot of people will know my story, but I never assume that everybody does, of course. So my our only daughter, Rosie May, was tragically murdered in December 2003. So following that, we obviously had the aftermath of the murder trial and everything else, which went on for about a year in total. And during that time, we decided that we did a few things. Actually, we did a few things. We did quite a lot, actually.
Yes.
We did a ball in memory of Rosie May for 300 people. We did.
I remember a song being released as well at the time.
My husband, recorded Brown Eyed Girl in her memory, which was endorsed by, tell me, mine's gone.
I
Come
can't
on. Who is it? Brown Eyed Girl. Oh,
Anne Morrison was
terrible.
it?
Anne Morrison.
Yes,
Who rarely does, you know, anything like that. In fact, he sang it himself as a tribute to Rosie May when he did a concert at the Royal Concert Hall in Nottingham. So anyway, so we did a few things, and but what happened during that time was that we had money sent to us from people all over the world, actually. Not knowing,
there was an outpouring of love and compassion, wasn't there?
There was, absolutely. And, you know, thankfully child murders are rare, but when they happen, they are high profile in the media. So, you know, we had, you know, letters and, you know, £5 in envelopes from, you know, a senior citizen up to some people did. I remember a group in Ireland, I think it was a sports group, might have been a rugby group, did a fundraiser, you know, and all this money was raised, as you say, out of pure compassion and actually for our family. We felt, I don't know how we felt really, but we kind of felt, you know, we just needed to keep it for the time being, put it somewhere. So Graham's father opened up an account and we kind of put it into an account. And as time went on, you know, we this accumulated basically, and we actually sold the CD as well for the charity, because obviously we set up a charity so that we could have a charity account for the money. And we sold over 3,000 copies of that CD. So yeah, and then the following Christmas, we decided we didn't want to be here. It was too painful to be here with the recollections of the year before. So we went to Southeast Asia to get away from everything. And we wanted to go somewhere where Christmas wasn't celebrated. So, you know, not a Christian country. And we stood on the shore of an island just off Sri Lanka on Boxing Day. And
of course, 2004, people will remember that date, absolutely.
And the tsunami hit, 2004, you're right. So obviously we were lucky to survive. The day before, we planted a little palm tree in Rosie May's memory. And after the wave had hit the island, we went back to look for it, thinking it would just be completely gone.
Yeah.
As because, you know, the wave had damaged things like it had pulled all the docking where the seaplanes land out of the sea. It had severed the legs of the bungalows, you know, the water bungalows, the stilts.
Yeah.
They were severed. And we found the palm tree, and there it stood miraculously with debris swirling all around it. And we thought, wow, you know, this is
incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And that was our inspiration for, you know, kind of doing what we did, because we got back and started to watch on TV the death toll rising in Sri Lanka and the thousands of children that had been made parentless by the tsunami. We had an amount of money, which we'd already given half of it actually to Sheffield Paediatric Intensive Care Unit, where Rosie May spent the last 48 hours of her life. But that was kind of the start of it, really. And we built our first, firstly, we built a children's home for girls had been made orphans by the tsunami. And that was, you know, how we started the charity.
I mean, it's just, you can't even put into words just the incredible journey that you have had. I mean, just heartbreaking, but out of that heartbreak have, you know, created something so meaningful, so important. So where does that bring you to today with the Rosie May Foundation? Obviously, we've had this very unique time in our history that must have affected charitable donations and what you're doing right now, because ordinarily you'd have a ball this time of year, wouldn't you?
Yeah, in fact, our ball would have been on Saturday, July the 4th, and we were predicted to raise over 60,000 on the night. So absolutely devastating for us. And the really difficult thing with events is that actually it's very difficult we've had to cancel, because it's actually very difficult to postpone. Because, you know, how can we say, well, okay, you know, we'll run it again in October, or we'll run it again. You just don't know at this moment. You just don't know. So we've had to cancel. So very, very challenging times. We are struggling, to be frank. You know, our money, our income that we earned for the charity came mostly from events. So I would say 75% came from events, and of course events have just dropped off the calendar. No such word anymore. It's just gone. So, you know, we are in a time where we need to radically change our model. And, you know, rethink everything, but obviously that takes time. And so during that time, we're just in survival mode, I guess, at the moment.
And what does that mean for the young women in Sri Lanka?
Exactly. And this is the thing, you know, I think the most difficult thing as well about this crisis is that obviously everybody is affected. Everybody in the world is affected. So therefore, it makes it more challenging to raise money for the women that, you know, rely on our support, because obviously everybody is dealing with their own crisis, their own situation. You know, so when we put out an appeal, for example, like I'm just using this as an example, the 2015 earthquakes in Nepal, which is another country that we work in. You know, those 2015 earthquakes were the only natural disaster that was happening at that time. So everybody can focus on that.
Absolutely, yes.
So this is, you know, so this is very different. And the other thing as well is, although we are all, you know, fighting the same disease, we're not actually all in the same boat.
No, absolutely not.
You know, and I think that's an important point to make, because our experience of lockdown is not, I can absolutely tell you, somebody's experience of lockdown in Sri Lanka or Nepal. You know, lockdown for them is, you know, no income, no food, very little sanitation, living in an overcrowded space. You know, lockdown just doesn't work in these countries. It's, you know, it's not.
And the healthcare provision is not, I mean, it's not in the same league that we have. I mean, we're very blessed to have the NHS.
Exactly. And, you know, so it's very different there. And, you know, there's, you know, no furloughing, there's, you know, your money just stops. And particularly for the women that we support, because they are daily workers.
Right.
So we've trained the first female drivers in Sri Lanka to drive pink tuk-tuks as
yes.
And so for them, you know, basically, as here, you know, public transport was just stopped. So of course, so that means their income just stops. So where do they, you know, there's no other income then coming in, you know, there's no, so you know, it is very different for them. But now they are just starting to ease out of lockdown. You know, they are starting to just get back on their feet. But I think for Sri Lanka particularly, it was a double whammy because, of course, the year before, it was the Easter bombings.
Absolutely. So the tourists weren't visiting, they weren't getting as much income from that.
Yeah, it's like, and it's at the same time, you know, so it's April again, it's like deja vu for them. You know, they were literally, the country was literally just getting back on its feet, and now this has happened. So, it, you know, I think for them, it's double impact, really.
So what does that mean for the way that you might change the way that the model of the foundation works?
Yeah, I mean, what we recognised very early on was that we, you know, although we're based here, obviously, we work from our local, we've got an office in Bingham in our local town. So although we're based here and we do provide, you know, lots of opportunities for local people, we work with the universities, we run internship programs. What we realised that we were now, our own community was actually in crisis. So what we decided to do very quickly, even before we went into lockdown, was we pivoted all our resources to actually help our own community.
Right.
So the little pink tuk-tuk that was sitting idle because obviously all the events it was going to were cancelled. We decided to utilise in our own community. So we mobilised our network of volunteers, we trained them to drive, and we have just completed this week our 3,000th delivery.
Wow, incredible. So out of, I mean, here we have a charity hitting adversity, and the recipients of that charity hitting that adversity, and still you galvanise together and make a difference and create that difference. Hats off to you, Mary. That's incredible.
And what that's done for us as a charity is obviously raised awareness of our charity in our own locality. I don't think there is now a single person in Bingham or surrounding villages that doesn't know who the Rosie May Foundation is.
Absolutely. Can't miss a pink tuk-tuk, can you?
And it's become quite iconic, actually, because what we also did was we used it for Clap for Carers. So every week it went to a Clap for Carers in a different location, and we partnered with the fire station. And so not only was it the pink tuk-tuk, but it was, you know, a fire engine with all its sirens and a crew that did that Clap for Carers. So it was absolutely amazing, actually. And you know, so we're and you know what we will do when we talk about changing the model is we will continue to work in our own community. So particularly now we're focusing on working with our senior citizens that obviously now we know who they all are. We have a relationship with them because we've been delivering prescriptions and bread and eggs and, you know, I mean, you name it, we've delivered it. The issue is that they are all very, very anxious of coming out.
Understandably.
Going out and about, understandably. So now it's all about building that confidence to ease out of lockdown. So we've started a new initiative called Cake and Chat. So basically our famous cupcakes, which are made by a group of, local women that bake them, donate the ingredients and bake them for us every week. We will turn up with a couple of cupcakes and have, that doorstep chat.
Yes.
With these people, and just try and reassure them, and see kind of what other type of help they need, just to be able to get them down to the local market,
yes.
Or the shops or whatever. So,
and so integrating back into
absolutely,
the wider world and feeling
because now it's all about mental health and trying to reduce the impact of social isolation, which obviously this has caused, the lockdown has caused. So that's what we're doing there. Events, obviously, we're looking at, kind of more online, stuff. And the other thing that we've recognised that is our bloodline actually for the charity is regular giving.
Yes.
So, people that will give, anything from, we have people that give anything from £3 to 250 pounds a month to sponsor the charity or sponsor a specific family. There are different things that basically you can sponsor, but what we've recognised is that income stream is not affected by situations like this. So
so they've got that continued commitment.
Exactly, and that's kind of like our bread and butter. So we are focusing on trying to develop that and expand on that side of things. And it is difficult as people become unemployed and we go into recession and everything else, and it is and obviously we are trying to get government money that's been allocated for small charities, but I'd need another hour to talk about.
I'm sure there's lots of paperwork to fill in for that.
It's a long story. So challenging times, but obviously it's challenging times for everybody, isn't it? And I think that's what makes it doubly hard, really, for charities, So,
but I'm totally inspired by your continued vision to keep on making a difference, regardless, and being adaptable and innovative in the ways of making sure that keeps happening, because it's important. And
I think we were able to use our experience in our own community. That was the other thing. Because what we've been doing in Bingham is exactly what we've been doing in Sri Lanka and Nepal. We've been, empowering families, living on the poverty line. We work, with families in crisis. So actually, there are lots of parallels. So, it was just like, well, do you know what? If we can do it there, we can do it here. And it's, it's really worked. And I'm sure
I'm sure that will come back to you tenfold as we move through this time and out the other side of it. The local community won't forget what you have done, and therefore I do believe it will come back to you.
I mean, we've just had an article that's been written by the manager of the market, and we've been hailed as a lifeline for market traders, because when this happened, we the Eggman, for example, he didn't have the resources to be able to get all his eggs to people. So we were doing all these egg deliveries, but that actually kept his business afloat. Until he was able to then get back and sort things out. And so that's just an example of so we've kind of we've not only helped vulnerable people, but we've also helped the local business community as well, just to kind of keep things rolling over, because they were just completely overwhelmed. I mean, the pharmacist was just like and he's I spoke to him just yesterday, and he said it would just have been so tricky without you guys. And we're still doing it now. We're still doing pharmacy deliveries now, because why would we stop? It gives us access to those very people that, you know, we can help. So
it's
so
like
yeah,
that
great partnership.
Yeah, it's like that pay it forward, isn't it? That collaboration, you know, and we don't always know the knock-on effect or the domino effect or the ripple effect, if you like. So you're creating a ripple that is not only touching those that are vulnerable in our communities, but it's also supporting the pharmacist, it's supporting the eggman, and, you know, then it inspires somebody else to do something in their village or their community, and on it goes and on it goes. And
hopefully, you know, we've been going into schools, we've been, you know, tomorrow, for example, we're taking our famous rainbow cupcakes to, you know, year 6 leavers at, you know, Flinton Primary School. We're going to Radcliffe-on-Trent Junior School, you know, and we've done them for teachers who are, you know, under massive amounts of stress. You know, children that have missed out on so many things, you know, those children that are leaving, you know, they would have been having barbecues, prom nights, wouldn't they? You know, all that stuff. And if we can just turn up, what we realised very early on was that actually what the Pink Tuk Tuk does is it actually brings good cheer. And it brings a smile to people's faces, you know, and actually that's become far more important than the loaf of bread or the, you know, the cupcake. It's not actually about that anymore. It's about the fact that, you know, people love seeing the Pink Tuk Tuk, and it just, you know, lifts people's spirits, and, you know, and that's what people need, don't they? You know, whether it's
they need
a
that
child
joy.
in a primary school, a teacher, a business owner, you know, a senior citizen, that's what people need. So yeah, that's what
brings such joy.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing your story and the journey and the amazing work that you are doing right now and will continue to do. As I asked with all my guests, Mary, before we finish, what would be, out of all of your experiences, you know, out of adversity into the wonderful work that you do, all of those life experiences, what would be your top life tip to share?
Well, it's very simple, Lisa. Somebody once said to me in my very darkest days, if the only thing you do when you get out of bed is make your bed, then you have achieved, you know, a great thing. Because if you make your bed, you have set your intentions for the day, and that very simple task will then lead on to other things. You know, you might then put the kettle on and make a cup of tea, or you might, you know, whatever. And if you have the worst possible day, you will know that you have a lovely made bed to go back to, rather than, you know, going back to a, you know, horrible messy bed. So it's very simple. When you get up every morning, just make your bed. Make your bed. And
Brilliant.
That's it, really.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today. And thank you so much for taking the time out. You'll be a true inspiration to anybody watching. I am absolutely certain.
Thank you, Lisa. Lovely to catch up with you.
Thank you.
You've been fabulous as always.
Thank you.